Okay, so episode 10, Transmuting Pain, Madiha creator.
Tazeen Anjum. I'm a writer and a dreamer navigating through reality.
Thank you, Tazeen, for being here.
You're most
Um,
Transmuting pain with a whole lot of smiles.
yes, isn't that the only way though? We try.
True.
We try.
And we feel that's why we try.
Speaking of, I think that's thank you for giving me that cue, because I think feeling is the feeling that I had about healing when I first began was that healing was equal to, in my head, this was about 2.5 years ago, being super positive about life. And so what I'd been hearing from my parents for a long time is, my God, you're such a strong woman. And I'd been hearing from my friends, oh my God, you're such a strong woman. Sometimes in some odd conversation that I'd have with my son, Mama, you're a strong woman. And nobody had taught me that, but I had decoded strength as somebody who chooses happiness, chooses to look at the positive side of life at all times, chooses to feel good when circumstances are not feeling good. So somebody who's a deliberate sifter, almost like a छानी, जिसमें आप जो चीज़ें आपको नहीं चाहिए वो खुद ब खुद नीचे परात में चली जाती हैं, और ऊपर जो है जो नहीं चाहिए वो ऊपर रह जाती हैं, और जो आपको चाहिए वो नीचे परात में चली जाती हैं. तो मैं ये छान रही थी अपनी ज़िंदगी को. मैंने कहा कि ये मुझे सारी चीज़ें नहीं चाहिए. अब जो मुझे चीज़ें नहीं चाहिए थी वर चीज़ें विच हर्ट अ लॉट. So चीज़ें like pain, चीज़ें like grief, चीज़ें like anger, चीज़ें like disappointment. Because ये सारी चीज़ें जो हैं वो had been my nemesis for a long time. And also I had been around because my ex-marriage, I was with my ex-partner who was depressed and who did not like to call himself a depressed individual. But that constantly, what that meant was that it was very difficult for him to get out of bed. It was very difficult for him to attach even simple goals to everyday life, much less the big picture of life. तो मुझे लगता था कि पेन और ग्रीफ और डिसअपॉइंटमेंट का मतलब ये है कि आप बेड के अंदर पड़े रहोगे, आप नहीं हिलोगे, और आप आगे, like there is no physical movement, there's no forward movement, you'll be stuck in a place forever. And so that's how I began my journey, right, for healing. It's like, I'm going to choose to be positive. And so I started with a lot of healing frequency music, lot of night affirmations. Earphones लगा के मैं सो जाती. सुबह भी मेरे study के अंदर जो है वो I would just keep those tracks on. So that and I was, I deliberately looked up all the steps on how you rewire your brain. I was really interested in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. So I looked at how to get your brain to unlearn patterns by doing new things. तो मैंने नई एक्टिविटीज़ भी कर ली, जो मैं किताबें पढ़ना जो the books that I used to love to read, I stopped reading them, started afresh, blah blah blah.
You changed countries.
And I changed countries. I was like, अच्छा इसका तो ये मतलब है कि कुछ भी. And I wanted to actually changing countries is a separate, because मुझे हमेशा there was one part of my life which I've always wondered what would it be like to live abroad. And I hadn't gotten a chance to do that while I was a student. तो बाकी तो फिर work ही बचता था. तो I created a space in my life to be able to shift abroad with my 2 kids. So मैंने सब कुछ ही, हाँ, थोड़ा drastic change जो था, मैंने countries भी change, अपनी मिट्टी change कर ली. मैंने कहा चलो जी बिल्कुल ही शुरू से शुरू करते हैं. तो जब मैं वहाँ पे पहुँची, a lot of uncomfortable emotions that I had successfully put aside at some nicely curtained away part of my mind started emerging.
I used to do that somebody in my childhood or in my adolescent years had taught me this trick that whatever is like way too difficult to handle or not something that you want to handle at the moment, just put it in a big black box, lock it, and throw that box with the lock in a dark sea.
Wow, what a dark
Way
suggestion
yeah,
and advice.
exactly.
This is like what I don't know, some Hans Christian Andersen ki twisted fairy tale.
So yeah, I did that for the longest of time, and I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Then
So
the accumulation and the.
हाँ, लेकिन you know what happens with those things?
Thank you for reminding me about that black box, though.
Are you going to go back and rediscover all the contents you'd packed away? Yeah. But होता ये है कि with all the no matter how carefully we've packed those away and no matter how deep we've put them, sometimes it takes a small trigger एंड वो जो ट्रिगर है उसमें आइस एक बुलबुले उठना शुरू करते हैं ऑफ दैट सरफेस दैट यू आई एम इमेजिनिंग इट इज़ द सी कि आपने उसके अंदर काले डब्बे फेंके हुए हैं इन द डीपेस्ट पार्ट्स ऑफ द ओशन. तो इवेंट्स होना शुरू होते हैं तो हल्के हल्के ना बुलबुले उठना शुरू होते हैं. जिस तरह ना जब डेड बॉडीज डिस्कवर होती हैं, somebody had thrown them away for good and you thought we'd never be discovered, तो अब वो ना आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ऊपर बॉडीज आना शुरू होती हैं. पहले बुलबुले उठते हैं, फिर एक बॉडी आई, फिर दो, फिर पता चला पूरा पूरा सीरियल किलर था यहाँ पे तो इस पूरे सीन में. तो दो लाइक दो सीरियल किलर बॉक्सेस जो आपने हाइड किए होते हैं वो फिर बुलबुलों से बात शुरू होती है. बट उसके बाद सारी जो बॉडीज़ है ना दे कम राइट बैक अप ऑन द सर्फेस. तो जब वो बॉडीज आती है ना सरफेस के ऊपर तो दैट्स हाँ सेम आई एम देयर आई एम विटनेसिंग हैज लाइक डूड हाउ मेनी वर देयर लॉस्ट काउंट. तो लेकिन जब वो दोबारा आना इट इज़ अ ग्रेवयार्ड ऑफ आवर सेल्व्स and of all our emotions which are very very uncomfortable because nobody likes talking about pain. You know, it makes us uncomfortable. Death makes us uncomfortable.
And we also try and cover them up in shape of human beings and situations.
What do you mean?
Not just that, you know. So sometimes, let's say, we would associate the feeling of anger with a certain situation or a person, though it's not just that. It's a whole lot more, and maybe it's a lot less, which is because we want to accumulate it in some form and shape. So we put it in a person or a situation.
Yeah. But I think the forms and shape part of it is an essential part of meeting your pain for the first time, especially for somebody who feels in visuals, and I believe you also feel in visuals.
Yes. And because we're also formed bodies at the end, so we will only be able to connect with something like that.
Yeah. So how it translates for me is every time that you have to sit with an emotion or a feeling, it's very similar to revisiting the place of trauma where it first occurred. So before patience comes much later. Before that is the first part of it is you're not ready. It doesn't feel safe to go back there. Right? So you don't want to go back there. So your first instinct is denial. Then the second instance that you feel is, okay, it's right here in front of me, this emotion, and I need to deal with it now. And so let me go back and see where it came from. When you go back to that place of trauma, Tazeen, there's a intense physical pain.
Yes.
That comes with revisiting that place, and it's a physical pain. And what that looks like, what it has looked like for me, is curling up on the floor, and sometimes on the phone with you, sometimes on my own. But a pain so intense that आपकी अंदर से चीखें निकलती हैं आंसुओं के साथ साथ. So if somebody had told me that this is what healing looks like, you curled up on your bathroom floor crying for something that happened 40 years ago, but it's a wound on your soul and it needs to be looked at and it needs to be faced. I would not have agreed to sign that contract. I would have said, you know what, I'm going to take a trip, buy myself more clothes, shoes, bags. It's always helped me. Why not now? Order another junk food meal, whatever it takes, binge watch Netflix, whatever it takes for me not to go through it. But मैंने healing बड़ी rose tinted glasses से शुरू की थी, positive, singing la di da. लेकिन where it's actually the real part of it, and that's why everybody gets scared, is what we call the shadow work, right? Which is going back to places of trauma. And every time you go back, although the emotion is the same, the trauma is different. So when I had to go back to my sexual abuse when I was 10 or 11, it felt different. When I had to go back before that to me feeling abandoned in a household by my parents because I was not being seen and I was on the sideline somewhere while their life played out for themselves between the two of them, it was a different trauma. Then I saw myself growing up, making decisions which were detrimental to my soul and my heart, giving birth to my son alone, bringing him up alone, not accepting him as my son for at least a year and a half into it. All of those are traumas, and trauma as a daughter, trauma as a girl, trauma as a child, trauma as a wife, trauma as a woman, and then trauma as a mother that I inflicted on my child, right? And then I go back to those. Then I go back to my ex-marriage, when I got married the second time. And the person that I became in that marriage, I was emotionally abusive. I was, and physically abusive. And what I was getting in return, whatever the trigger for it was an intense amount of pain of me being rejected by my partner within the first 2 days of my marriage. But I chose to stay in that marriage for 10 years. So when I have to go back and relive those 10 years, I don't mean day by day, but as a moment which is so intense and so potent. So I've had to go through all of that. And then I remember very recently the trauma I've had to go back to, and it is a trauma of the first time that my daughter was diagnosed with being on autism spectrum. And I remember my first instinct was, and actually in all the years since, I was so focused on showing up as a strong mother for her. Now, what that meant was that whoever decides to pity her or decides to look at her with pitiful eyes or makes her feel less, I would fight against them, So I was very engaged with keeping her safe from the outside world. And just about 2 weeks ago, when I revisited what it means for my daughter to be on the spectrum, there is no other word that comes to mind but grief. Of an entire, I've always wanted to have a daughter, always, because I thought that I would do right by her somehow, right? As a woman, it was a woman-to-woman kind of connection that I had imagined in my head. And I feel the grief comes from the fact that I did not allow myself to feel the pain of not having an entire lifetime with the daughter that I had imagined when I'd first conceived her. So going back to my trauma or the pain that came with not being able to deal with my own emotions at that time was a different kind of. So itni zyada wo suppressed. And then when I got divorced again, and I remember when I'd first gotten divorced and I had to bring up Asad, I said, I would never be able to be a single mom again. I don't ever want to do that again. And here I was having to do exactly that, taking responsibility in every way for both my children. तो उस वक्त जो उसका जो एक पेन है वो अलहदा है. तो इट्स ऑलमोस्ट लाइक आपको बार बार पेन हो ही जा रही है, बट इवेंट्स चेंज होते जा रहे हैं. तो वो पेन को मैं फिर भी कोई आई कांट पुट देम इन वन मैसिव बॉल एंड आई से कि दिस मैसिव बॉल इज इक्वल टू 15 इवेंट्स इन माई लाइफ. हर एक की मुख्तलिफ है पेन. सो व्हाट आई डिस्कवर्ड वाज अ टूल. Okay, and that's why I wanted to call this episode Transmuting Pain, because for me there are perhaps 3 steps of dealing with painful emotions. The first step is acknowledging them. They're
Awareness.
there. Awareness, absolutely. The first step is awareness. The second one is accepting. Awareness is, oh, they're here. The second one is understanding why they are here. That means going back to your places of trauma. But the third one, which is just as essential, is finding them a place to put them somewhere. Where are you going to put them? You can't throw them in the sea again because they're up to the surface. Ab nahi ho sakta kuch. So what do you do with them?
And also because you've changed. So as you said earlier, they've changed as well. So that we're definitely going to interact with them in a different manner.
Yeah. Yes. So how it translated. So like the third step for me was, okay, अब मैं इनको मैंने रखना कहाँ पे है? And it was almost as if a knowing that I came up with, which is I started transforming them into a garden.
Wow.
So, now it's not one big generic garden. I had जिस तरह होता है ना, आप किसी botanical garden में जाओ तो हर फूल की क्यारी की हर दरख्त का कोई नाम है. So you know who they are, where they come from and why they're there. So I started making small kyariyan. So this now, and how I would imagine them was that I would look at pain, for example, that I'm feeling with respect to being a mother who abandoned her child, who did not accept her child, and I would hold that pain in my heart, and then I would see it transform into a translucent, glistening, I don't know, a rose ki kyari, like gulab ki puri kyari, right? So that's one. But then another kind of pain is a champa. Another kind of pain is an amaldas. Like a fourth kind of pain is motia. तो हर एक को, because I want to honor it, because all of those moments have taught me beautiful, 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 amazing lessons. So if all of these moments have taught me beautiful, amazing lessons, and they deserve a beautiful, amazing place to live in, and I want to be in that place to feel okay about the pain which inevitably life will bring in the future. That means that I don't have to panic. I don't have to worry about what would I do with them. I know exactly what to do with this entire garden for it, right? So building this garden, transmuting pain into a garden, also reassures me. It reassures me that in future, when life inevitably will bring pain of different kind, I don't have to panic. I don't have to feel afraid. There's a place for it. And the other thing is that place can only become beautiful once you have learned what you needed to learn from that pain, because pain will not be transmuted. And that's one of the laws as well. It will not be transmuted until you have learned from it. Yes, for that particular incident, it will be transmuted. And you can transmute pain without getting your lesson. But be ready for 15 million such similar lessons until you have learned the lesson, and then it's finally transmuted. So for me, each kyari in that garden of pain reminds me of the lessons that I've learned. They're not just transmuted pain. So the lessons that I've learned are on self-worthiness primarily, on what it means to choose yourself, what it means to forgive yourself and others, what it means to take ultimate responsibility for yourself and not blame anybody. The one lesson that I'm still learning is compassion. Because I've been a high achiever my whole life, अपने बारे में भी. तो मेरा ख्याल है कि since I'm like here, wherever that here may be, it, like in the universal scheme of things, it might not be nowhere, but in my head, it's a here. अगर मैं यहाँ पे हूँ, तो everybody I love must also be here. So then I'm not honoring the journey and their own experiences, and I am hurrying them up. That means I'm not really... the compassion that I would like to extend to them on taking their own time, taking their own place. Meet me when you're ready. That is what I'm learning from my latest pain chapter. Okay. So that's my entire concept on transmuting pain. Now you share, please.
So, as far as the image that you created and how you're transmuting pain is very much in sync with how I not really felt, because I don't think I really felt it right now, but I'm experiencing it. How you're transmuting pain is through grounding energy. It's basically your kyariyan bana rahi ho, right? So that's ground. And in the most human form, when we lose, let's say to death, तो वो भी हम ground के नीचे जाते हैं, mostly, right? So for me, pain, I'm not really sure if I've experienced it like a standalone process. I've experienced it probably from a time when I wasn't even born, physically painful experiences, or I don't know if my emotional faculties were developed in the womb. But the only grief I've actually experienced, I think, which I cannot ignore, because as I shared with you earlier, it was very easy for me to lock things in a big black box and just throw them with the keys in a big black sea, right? So the only grief that I could not really close my eyes away from was my father passing away. Anybody who knows me knows what sort of like a close bonded relationship I had with my father. And when he passed away, before and after that, for a very long time, I didn't really want to see it in the eye. What you talk about, like looking at it and accepting it. And it was so, in the real world, that grief brought so much pain that, as usual with pain, I just wanted to close my eyes to it. But I couldn't because he was physically not there. Um, I think, and we were talking before this session earlier, and I told you that I'm in a very, very gray area. So I don't even understand it right now fully, to be very honest, what I'm going through or what I've been going through since the past 5 years, 4 years almost. The process of losing him, and then the process of living with the fact that I've lost him.
Hmm.
So, but one thing I do know, why that this is how we met in this world, is basically just a fraction of who he and I actually are.
Hmm.
That's why we never said a goodbye. The oddest thing is that I used to be with him all the time, but the timing that he passed on and I was not around him, and when I left him, I didn't say goodbye. So we're actually transmuting an entire relationship, I feel.
Hmm.
And maybe it's part of the denial phase of grief that I'm not really looking at it. Maybe it's actually another realm that, we're going to catch up again. But right now, it's so gray and it's so foggy that I just know that there are some elements which help me walk through it because it's so gray. Color helps me. A whole lot of color, natural colors. I love greens, I love blues, I love yellows, and these are all natural colors. They lift me up. A whole lot of gratitude because with me, um, I, I can't seem to breathe
Yeah.
when I actually we were talking about physical manifestation of that pain. So uh, if it's you curling up on the washroom floor, it's me basically not being able to breathe wherever I am, even if I'm on my own bed. So and my heartbeat goes so high that I can't. I think it's also one of my survival mechanisms right now. Let's say that a physical pain comes in between, and I get absorbed and busy in dealing with that rather
Hmm.
than actually looking at the core issue. But I know what's the core issue.
Hmm.
You just know.
Yeah.
It's just that you're not ready to look at it. Color is one, I think, that has picked me up. It's also part of the day, the color, when it's day, you see everything.
Hmm.
I remember, I think it was the second or the third day of Abu passing on, and you called me actually. And you asked me what gives you a sense of time. And I was on my period, so I couldn't really, proverbially pray those days. But I remember telling you Azan. So, color and a whole lot of scriptured affirmations, I would say, not just affirmations or any less of them or any more of them. Like, because I didn't know what to trust. So I could only trust, the words that come in form of a book, let's say.
Hmm.
And I think about 3 months down the line, I started with Bismillah Rahman Rahim.
Mm.
because I was just starting. And so a whole lot of gratitude, Alhamdulillah, for being able to breathe after I thought I cannot breathe. And so after that, also COVID happened actually. And when we speak of COVID, we speak of a worldwide loneliness,
Yeah.
you know. So when that happened, and I'd just gone through this entire episode of losing somebody to apparently healthcare issues and how in our world we frame it. But when COVID happened, I just wanted to reach out and help the entire world, just like I tried to help my father. And you know so that was one way of transmuting the grief that I was feeling,
Mm.
healing others, helping others in my own way,
Mm.
right? Um, and now it's actually, I think, that phase where I'm being compelled to look at it right in the eye.
Mm.
And that's why it had, because up till now, I'd just been trying to transmute it with in different ways of connecting with the outside, right? And now it's time to look at it. So I'm trying to connect with the inside, and I've realized that it's reflecting in how my activities, how my physical movement has changed. So if my physical movement was with the outside factors earlier, now it's staying home, writing, walking, doing yoga, doing my tasbih, um, coloring, rearranging my entire life, just let's say mustering up the courage to sit and look at things from the outside. Because to be able to look inside, you need to be on the outside as well.
So this reminds me of when I was in Malaysia. I stumbled upon this beautiful healing technique called Theta healing, and I ended up taking a course, actually extensive courses, and getting a certificate as a Theta healing practitioner. And one of the things that intrigues me most about Theta healing is there's no magic wand. It tells you, it enables you, it guides you to go back within into the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves and see who wants to say to us, who wants to speak to us, which part of us wants to speak to us, what do they want to say, and how can you help that part. So I love how you speak about it as an outsider, that you can look at different parts. And the other part of, and linked to that, what I loved was an example, a case reference that they give in Theta healing, which is the woman who, I forget her name, Vienna. She was the creator of Theta healing as a discipline. So, and she is a great healer. And so a woman came to her and she had cancer. And she worked with a woman, worked on her beliefs, because the essential practice of Theta healing is anything that's not looked at, any emotion that's hurting you is not looked at for a long time, solidifies into physical disease. So there's solid blocks of unreleased energy. They make themselves known through body ailments and body diseases. So she helped the woman cure herself of cancer. And 3 months later, the woman comes back and she says the cancer is back. And so Vienna asked her a simple question. And it's one of the questions that is asked in Theta healing. How is this disease serving you? Because more often than not, when we are not ready to look at our emotion or one particular emotion, that means that there is something that living with that emotion is teaching us right now.
Mm.
And the moment we understand the lesson, we can release the pain.
Mm.
So the woman said, she invited the woman to go within herself through meditation. And the woman said, my husband had been traveling forever and he was never home emotionally, physically, mentally.
Mm.
He was never with me. And since I got cancer, he's been at home. He's been taking care of me. He's transformed into the man that I wanted him to be.
Mm.
So this cancer has brought my husband back to me.
Mm.
And so Vienna asked her, she said, do you want to get rid of this cancer? And the woman replied, no. So the beautiful lesson in this for me personally was that there are only two ways, Tazeen. One is if we're living with a disease or an emotional condition, we are not ready to let go of it because it's serving us in some way and we're not aware of how it's serving us. So the easiest thing is to go and ask that emotion. When the emotion has outlived its use, you will automatically find a way to be able to transmute it. So my question to you would be, how do you think this grief of your father's loss, how do you think it's serving you right now? This is not meant to be a theta healing session, but
it's keeping me comfortable in not saying goodbyes. Goodbyes are very, very hard. I didn't say one to him. So if I actually say goodbye to him, it's like I learned how to say goodbye,
And then what happens?
And then so many goodbyes happen. I hope there are those situations and people in the big black box, though. Right? So they can go back to where they belong. Yeah.
So once you say goodbye to him, there are other goodbyes that you'll also have to say. Now, in the past, present, or in the future?
Any.
Yeah. And what happens if you have to say goodbye to a lot of people?
I'm not used to it. This is something that I'm just not used to.
What would happen if everybody that you knew and everybody that you loved, you had to say goodbye to? What will happen then?
I'll probably there's going to be no society for me, that's what.
So one of the biggest fear that a human being has because you know what grief does? It surrounds you, or pain does. It cocoons you in a black space where you're both safe and protected at the same time. Because we are so safe and protected from what? From the fear of being alone. And so sometimes some people choose to spend a lifetime spending time with the memories of their loved one than going ahead and having new experiences. I'm not saying that's you, I'm saying that's the human condition. Because it's safer to be inside grief circle than to be outside, where you again at some point would be left alone. So the fear of being left alone in the future keeps you inside the circle of grief.
True.
And I guess what we were doing here was a brief sneak peek into a theta healing session. What happened? Because there's another tool. I love the technique where they use so they actually through questions bring you to your worst fear, to the very worst fear. And once you see, and I love this thing about anything that is not light, anything, whether it's anger, bitterness, jealousy, disappointment, whatever, anything that's not light. I love the fact that all of these things thrive in unawareness. us. The moment you look at them, oh, I see you there, loneliness. I see you there, fear. I see you there, um, you know, fear of being left alone. The moment you are aware of them, they already lose their power. It's already healed. It's already like you don't even have
Because
to.
that's all it needs, just the attention.
Yes, it just needs to be acknowledged. So वैसे ही that's why theta healing they take you to the very end, because the moment you look at your deepest fear or your darkest fear and you say कि ये तो कुछ था ही नहीं, I don't know what future will look like. I'm just trying to imagine my future from my experiences of the past, and all of this is lip service right now, because right now we were just standing under the tree and I was telling you, I was like, Tazeen, I am so scared. I've never been more clear and I've never been more confused in my whole life. So yes, intellectually or through theta healing's lens, I can, we can have this conversation on how when fear is looked at. But the fact is, Tazeen, fear and doubt for me personally, one is holding my one hand and the other one is holding my other hand. And this is me having been on this journey for 4.5 years. And I have not even tried to transmute fear and doubt because I feel like they're now essentially a part of my DNA. What transmuting fear and doubt looks like for me is I acknowledge them holding my hand and I look at them with love. आप मेरे साथ चले, मेरे साथ चलो, but मैं यहाँ रुक नहीं रही हूँ आपके लिए. And my hope is for myself.
Amen.
My hope is at some point they'll say, okay, you keep walking. We'll sit here. We're done. But right now they're not done. So instead of hiding them and instead of locking them away, I'm choosing to walk with them. It's the best I can do right now. So all pain then is not transmuted into a beautiful garden. Some of it is destined to walk with you for a while until you've learned whatever you meant to learn from it. And I do believe that what I meant to learn from it for myself is compassion. I'm a hard person when it comes to looking at other people's progress. They should have done better. This one they definitely should have, could have, but they did not. अच्छा ये नहीं तो ये भी नहीं किया. Oh, why do I even bother loving them? There's a lot of judgment that comes for me in people that I love because and I think that's another lesson that I'm learning, which is that what it means to feel worthy is to also know that you're worthy, not in spite of, but because of all the places you've been, the darkest, deepest, darkest places, and some darkest, deepest places are still walking with you, and you're worthy because of that. But the moment we look at other people, we don't want to acknowledge the deepest, darkest parts of them. We're only looking at their actions, and so we're measuring their worthiness from their output. But if the zine and what that it kind of becomes my wake-up call, if somebody, and by somebody I mean the universe, had only measured my worthiness based on my output. So if I was not measured according to my actions, I want to not measure people according to their actions. And I know it goes against so many healing, so many motivational talks or whatever, which is their words are only look at their actions and not the words. And I said, look at none. Look at none. Look at them from the best version of yourself.
Of who you are.
Of who we are, absolutely.
It's also the achaguman, the good expectation from
Right.
Allah. The thing that the verse that you shared with me.
Which was?
Allahumma arzuqna min haythu la nahtasib.
Yeah, send me blessings from places that I cannot imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can imagine them because once we decide to imagine, only then, and Speaking of that, it also tells me that it's a very hopeful transmutation, but I
And
think I'm
my
working on
mother
that.
calls it utterly stupid, illogical and impractical. She's like, Madhya beta, kab सीखोगी, इतनी तो बुड्ढी हो गई हो. And I was like, Amma, we'll agree to disagree. She's like, acha khana kha lo. So that's where how we agree to disagree.
Yeah, so there's hope, there's hope in our own imagination as well. There's hope in our expectation. There's hope in how we want to frame things, and we want to look at things. And
But isn't that all there is though? Like, what else is life but the story that we are like, what else is the world other than the lens that we're looking at it through with? Like, what else is the world?
of course, and also the fact that, apart from all of this reality that we are living and we have lived, and unexpectedly extremely good things have come out of you and me,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of other people that we know.
Dude, Tazeen was so grown up.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah.
So, and in a lot more nicer manner than I ever expected
Of
myself
ourselves,
to.
right?
Exactly.
So it's like when every time I go over to your house, we like, at least I do, I look inside. And तुम भी शायद मेरे साथ कभी भी join कर लेती हो. तुम्हारे लंबा वाला तुम्हारा बड़ा वाला शीशा है. It's like, Madhya, no, I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud of you. Love who you're becoming.
So imagine कि अगर if we can walk past all of that, and with all of this awareness, and without actually the awareness, and reach here. Imagine the places, inshallah, we can go to with the awareness.
That is so beautiful. I think I love ending. Do you want to?
And that's actually the hope part that I wanted to talk about. When you were talking about that, you have grief and doubt in both of your hands. I'm walking through a very gray part, but I only have hope in both of my hands, like literally both, because I'm very obstinate, and I love happiness, and I want to go back to that time period where I only know how to be happy, even with all the pain. Not because I'm closing my eyes, because it's there and I respect it, but there's a whole lot of other life that I respect a lot more because it makes me more happy. It gives me lasting joys as well. So I just hope I get there.
I really like this image though. I like it's almost like an inverted image. So like how you describe it. So so when I imagine myself walking, I'm walking in absolute clarity. Like it's crystal pure and so clear. I can see from the eyes of my heart till the end of time. It's so clear, but I have hope, and with it, I have hope and fear and doubt holding my hand. You, on the other hand, are walking through a gray fog, right? And with it, you have hope holding both your hands. Such a stunning journey.
Yeah, it's a mirror image.
It is a mirror image. Well,
it's
some
inverted
image.
Mirror image.
Some trans-dimensional thing happening there. But that's beautiful.
And that's the only thing that keeps me going through the fog.
And nothing's going to stop me from going through, from walking on this path that I'm walking.
I love movement. I can't stop. I can't stop.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for being here and for having a conversation.
For allowing me this conversation.
Thank you for allowing me a space in your life.
And it's great to meet you here.
Nah, other than your,
Hello, Madhya.
hi Tazeen, other than तुम्हारी चौकड़ी मार के तुम्हारे बेड के ऊपर चाय के मगे के ऊपर मगे पीना, दो पराठे खाना, but thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.